neighbor and friends, welcome. We are so glad you're here tonight. With the recent tragedy at the Pacific Palisades, as well as the Eden Canyon fire, many of us want to know, with this kind of situation, how much it will impact our economy. And now the President Trump's imposing a tariff on the various countries. Many of us are concerned whether or not if this will take our country into a recession. So I am so happy that Congresswoman Judy Chu will be here tonight. Maybe she can shed some light for us. But before we begin the meeting, I would like to tell a little bit tidbit about Judy. Believe it or not, when I was a young lad at UCLA, I was majoring in economic and Asian study. And guess who my professor was? And that was before Asian study was a popular major. Like now, UCLA was one of the first universities in the nation that taught this Asian study. And believe it or not, even though it's been many decades, I can tell you that Judy still has to say. So maybe at the end of her meeting, she will tell us and share with us some of her beauty secret. So without further ado, let's give Congresswoman Judy Chu a warm San Marino City Club.
Well, thank you so much for that very warm introduction, Ed. And what a pleasure it is to speak before the city of San Marino at the San Marino City Club. I am so glad to have this opportunity to interact with you. There has been a lot that's been going on, and you may have a lot of questions about them, but I have been immersed in so much, and I do want to tell you what we are doing to remedy this in Washington, D.C. Well, first of all, let's talk about the fires. I was heartbroken when the fires occurred in Altadena, Pasadena, because they were right in my district. And immediately, 9,500 structures burned down, 6,000 of them being homes. And 20,000 people were made homeless. And 18 people died, most of them in western Altadena. We have worked so hard on so many aspects of this tragedy. And I am grateful that President Biden immediately declared it a national disaster. And that allowed FEMA and the SBA Disaster Recovery Program to come and immediately provide services. Now we are in the phase of first having cleaned up the hazardous waste. So that's phase one. We are currently right in the middle of the debris removal. And that is being done after insurance is deducted at no cost to the homeowner. I have witnessed the debris removal operations, and I have to say it is very, very professionally done and very smooth. And I just feel encouraged because I know that so many homeowners feel so distressed. And it's not just homeowners, it's those who have homes, but maybe where there's so much smoke damage, they cannot yet occupy it. So there are so many people that have been affected. But what I do see is that with that debris removal, the rebuilding can begin. And I am so glad to announce to you that the very first permit for rebuilding has been issued to the first home in Altadena. Yes. And 6 permits have been issued in Pasadena. So we are making progress, but it will be a long and hard recovery. Nonetheless, I am so proud that we were able to issue $113 million from FEMA for serious need assistance, all the immediate needs for those who ran out of the house with only their clothes on. And also, the Small Business Administration has approved more than $2.3 billion in disaster aid loans for those businesses, but also homeowners and renters that were affected by the fire. Also, I am making it my mission to ensure that we have federal disaster aid supplemental funding. Governor Newsom has already submitted a request for $40 billion of disaster aid funds for California, just as North Carolina has done for ongoing needs after Hurricane Helene. And this package will provide an injection of desperately needed federal aid for rebuilding homes, businesses, and community institutions. And I am working to make sure that these funds are given with no strings attached, as has been done for every other disaster in our nation's history. Wildfires have no political affiliation, and we have helped everybody in the most devastating time of need, regardless of whether they come from a blue state or a red state. And that's what we must do here. So we are working to make sure that comes forth, and it'll go a long way towards recovery. And I believe that we will be able to rebuild Altadena and Pasadena. Now, we also have to contend with the Trump administration systematically dismantling our federal government and posing an existential threat to our economy. And of course, what's on everybody's minds? Tariffs. Yes. This month, Trump single-handedly got us into a trade war that is sending the price of basic goods up while destroying overnight the retirements that so many Americans have saved for over a lifetime. These tariffs, in my opinion, make no sense. They punish many of our allies and partners, and the uncertainty is causing panic in markets and for businesses who are trying to plan for the coming months and years. Even though some of the tariffs have been paused, this ongoing trade war with China is going to make goods more expensive. This 145% tariff has never been before seen in our lifetime. And of course, it caused a trade war. What this means is that the prognosticators are saying this will be an increase of an average of $4,600 more per year per family. And the San Gabriel Valley is particularly vulnerable to this because you know how many importers and exporters we have in this valley. That's for sure. We have wonderful businesses here that do that. But they are saying to me that they don't know how long they're going to hang on with these sky-high prices before they have to close their doors. Now, just this past week, I was in a hearing in which I questioned the U.S. Trade Representative when he testified in front of the Ways and Means Committee, which is my committee of jurisdiction. I asked him if he was aware that there are products that America cannot grow ourselves, like bananas, coffee, and cacao beans, which makes chocolate. And then I asked him how businesses are supposed to get exempted from these tariffs. You see, the tariffs were given to every single country, including Guatemala and Ecuador, which grows these products, which we by and large do not. And so why are we imposing tariffs on such countries? It does not make sense. And in order to get an exemption from any of these tariffs, does it require you to fly to Mar-a-Lago? Is that what you have to do? And I know that unlike the CEOs of major companies like Facebook or Ford, my constituents, by and large, don't have the ability to go on TV or to the White House personally or Mar-a-Lago to ask for an exemption. So that means that families and small businesses are going to have to pay thousands of dollars a year in higher costs, while the president's friends and donors will very likely get exemptions, which is the very essence of corruption. So that is no way to run an economy and no way to run a country. Congress has the ability to take back our authority to establish new tariffs because you see, the president has issued these tariffs based on an emergency authority. And that's why he imposed these 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, who are supposed to be our allies. We're supposed to have this partnership that was then put into a deal called the USMCA. And so to impose these tariffs on them means that it means that we are indeed in greater trouble. But also, the excuse upon which the president imposed these tariffs was this emergency authorization. That's why he accused both countries of having immigration violations as well as fentanyl. Now, Justin Trudeau was sitting there scratching his head. Fentanyl? Canada does not produce fentanyl by any means, but that was the emergency authorization by which Trump impose these tariffs. And what we want to do is to take this authority back and to say that he cannot have this emergency authority and that any new tariffs would have to be approved by Congress. So those are some bills that are trying to provide some checks and balances to this very, very series of rash decisions. But what worries us most is the dismantling of government and our very basic services. At the Social Security Administration, he fired thousands of workers and closed field offices around the country. 7,000 workers. That's 1 out of 8 workers in the Social Security Administration. He wants to close 47 field offices of the Social Security Administration. And, it's hard enough to make sure that you can get the services that you need from Social Security, but we were making some progress on it. Now we are going to have a 50-year low in terms of people who service the seniors of America. That means hours and hours to wait in line in order to get, yourself approved, or maybe even something as basic as changing where you have your direct deposit for your Social Security check. And so if that wasn't bad enough, Trump gave his billionaire donor Elon Musk access to your private Social Security information and the power to turn off your benefits. He and his Doge teenagers, were given the ability to look at everybody's Social Security information and also even to manipulate it. That is very worrisome because if he has an enemy, would he then take away somebody's Social Security benefit or manipulate it somehow? In addition, we have our Health and Human Services. Just a few weeks ago, Secretary of Health and Human Services Robert Kennedy Jr. fired 10,000 dedicated civil servants at the Department of Health and Human Services without cause. They came in one morning, they put their key card into the slot, and it turned red rather than green. And that's how they found out they were fired. Yeah. And if you are a civil servant, it's supposed to be only with cause that you are fired. But they were just summarily fired. And these are our healthcare workers responsible for preventing diseases like measles and finding cures for Alzheimer's. But they were all wiped out. HIV and cancer researchers were sent home in the middle of their clinical trials. And this was all while the administration was spreading dangerous misinformation on vaccines and public health, including firing the teams that were responsible for sharing the information about the ongoing measles outbreak in Texas and who were supposed to be doing vaccine town halls. These cuts were advertised as a way to improve efficiency, but the truth is they will hamstring our national scientific and public health operations. They make our nation less healthy and they slow down scientific progress in this country. And let me talk about some firings that will really hurt us here in the San Gabriel Valley. Uh, Earlier this year, they also fired 3,400 U.S. Forest Service employees, including some that are responsible for critical wildfire mitigation and protecting our beautiful San Gabriel Mountains. I mean, I couldn't believe it because we are fighting every day to make sure we get more personnel up there to be able to manage the crowds that have come up there. And so, in response, I led 80 House members in sending a letter demanding that the Trump administration reverse these harmful layoffs to ensure that our public lands, and especially the surrounding communities of Altadena and Pasadena, can be protected from future wildfire risk. Because the Forest Service was beginning to do the forest mitigation. They have to clear out the brush, the dead vegetation that could make these these wildfires happen. And so that's why we did that letter. But then he also made massive cuts to biomedical research, $4 billion in NIH grants, which means that universities like USC and UCLA will lose millions in grant funding for medical research, and they will rescind graduate student offers. And uh, in a Ways and Means hearing last week, I shared the story of Dr. Kelly Kwan, a USC associate professor and pediatric surgeon, who, there were so many people are so upset and so mortified. They are my constituents, and they're telling us their stories about what has happened to them. This is a constituent who's studying the impact of prescription opioids on infants. I mean, this is a really worthy cause, but she was one of them. Her grant was canceled with no warning, and she was doing a good job, too. She had gotten good reviews. I also heard from NIH-funded researchers at the City of Hope who are deeply worried about what will happen to their ongoing research on diabetes, cancer, and more. And recently, Elon Musk and Doge eliminated funding for a California program that allows our state to buy locally sourced food to feed kids in schools right here in San Marino. So, what is the reason for all these cuts? It's to pay for gigantic tax giveaways to billionaires and big corporations. This is a reality. This is something called a reconciliation bill, which Trump is taking the means step by step to get going. And he has very clearly said that he wants to give $5.5 trillion in tax giveaways to the billionaires and corporations of this country. But the only way they can do it is by making massive cuts, the cuts that I've told you about so far, but also a massive cut of $880 billion from Medicaid and $230 billion from SNAP. And so this $880 billion from Medicaid is something I really want us to think about. It's the biggest cut to Medicaid ever in the history of this country. And why is it important to us? Well, another constituent who called me, Chief Kwong from Monterey Park, he said, I am a 74-year-old who has worked for 40 years as a warehouse worker. After decades of hard work, I now rely on Medicaid and Medicare for life-saving medication and medical care, especially after going hip and spine surgery. And it includes people like Bailey from Alhambra, whose daughter has a rare genetic disorder and relies on Medicaid to cover her costly care. She said that without this help, it would be impossible for her to care for her daughter alone. So I want to tell you that 40% of the births in America are paid for through Medicaid. And for seniors, Medicaid is especially important. For long-term nursing care, Medicaid pays for over half of the cost for seniors in this country. And I know that many are on Medicare, but there's such a close relationship between Medicare and Medicaid. You see, Medicare pays for a certain amount, But when that runs out, Medicaid takes over. And by the way, Medicaid is Medi-Cal in this country. I mean, in the state. For instance, Medicare pays for, on the average, 28 days of hospitalization. But what if you have Alzheimer's or a chronic disease or any disease that could take longer? After the 28 days runs out, then you are on Medicaid, or Medi-Cal, as we say in California. So Medicaid has such a close relationship to Medicare. And what that means is all of us, all of our parents, everybody would be affected by this gigantic cut in Medicaid. And so we know that this would be a disaster. We also know that these anti-immigrant actions are very, very alarming. I just want to tell you that Trump utilized the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 in order to deport all these Venezuelans. You see, what does that Alien Enemy Act say? It says that when you are at war with a country, you can deport anybody from that country. But guess what? We are not at war with any country. And also, these Venezuelans who were removed weren't vetted for whether they were a danger to this country. And so there is, in fact, this case right this minute where one of those who was deported to this El Salvadorian prison was never actually a criminal or part of any gang. And all 7 of the Supreme Court members said that he should be returned. Yeah. And so, I'm sorry, all 9 of them said that. And so we are in standoff. We are in standoff right now as to whether the rule of law will be upheld in this country and whether he will obey what the Supreme Court has ordered him to do. So, let's be clear. This will do nothing to make our country safer or improve our situation. And in fact, it will do the opposite. And I will continue to fight back on so many of these measures. And so what do we need to do going forward? Well, here's what I always say: legislate, litigate, activate. On legislate, we, the Democrats, are introducing hundreds of bills to stop all of these actions, including the most egregious one, which is having the access to your confidential data, the Social Security data, which has your Social Security number, your bank accounts, everything like that. And so we're stopping, we're doing legislation to stop that, but also to reinstate fired workers and to stop Trump's tariff taxes. And why are we doing this? Because the margin between Democrats and Republicans is so slim. We would only need 4 Republicans to join us in order to get any of those bills passed out of the House. Litigate. Well, I have to tell you, there's this nationwide effort, a very coordinated effort by a group called Democracy Forward, who's working with our state attorney generals, who have filed 180 lawsuits to stop all these actions. What's incredible is that they've won almost every single one of them. And in fact, these have been victories that have blocked Trump's attempts to cancel birthright citizenship, to freeze billions of dollars in international aid, to fire tens of thousands of federal employees, and to give Elon Musk and Doge unrestricted access to these treasury systems. And then the most important part is activating, and that is speaking out. Now, there are all kinds of outrageous things that Doge and Elon Musk and Trump are trying to do. For instance, the end to the Social Security phone line. I mean, what harm does that cause government to have a Social Security phone line? But they were actually going to dismantle it, so you could not call for such basic things as, "Hey, I would like to have my check deposited at a different bank. I will give you that information." Well, there was so much outrage that uh, Trump had to back down, and then it was reinstated. But it's that kind of thing. And in fact, I want to tell you that in the first Trump administration, um, he was trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. And so there was bill after bill to dismantle it. I know because I voted 70 times to save the Affordable Care Act. And in order to make sure that we got people to raise their voices, we held town halls in every district of the country. People flooded the switchboards in Capitol Hill. And then I'll never forget when many people in wheelchairs went to Congress, brought it to a halt by staging a sit-in. And ultimately, the Affordable Care Act was saved. So that's what we need to do to make sure that we raise our voices about the things that we know we cannot tolerate if we are to have an America that we love and trust and that will hold an optimistic future for us and our children and future generations. And so, yes, I am so happy to be here, but let's work together. I really want to work together with all of you here in San Marino to make sure that we can keep this the America that we know. Thank you all so very, very much. Okay. Questions, you mean? Okay. Okay.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Congresswoman?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you and your team for all the hard work you guys do, and I really appreciate it. At the both my year, so thank you. With Cop saying he's not going to bring Garcia back home, I mean, where are we at? I feel like the elephant in the room is he now has an authoritarian government, and I'm scared. Yeah, I'm terrified. And I'm terrified. I mean, and now he's saying he wants to take U.S. citizens and also send them to that prison in El Salvador. I mean, he said so many horrible things, but this is really scary.
Did everybody hear that question? Want to summarize
Yes.
the question?
It's about the standoff that we're in right now. Kilmer Garcia sent to the El Salvadorian prison. And, there's there's no evidence that he was a gang member. In fact, that's where the Supreme Court decided that he had to come back. But Trump is resisting that and, in fact, had a meeting with the Salvadorian president to probably get that Salvadorian president to not send him back. So, yes, what we are entering now is the phase of the constitutional crisis because what he's doing is flaunting the decision of the Supreme Court. And that is where he may have to be held in contempt of court. And in fact, I think that's really where we're headed next. Again, we have to raise our voices because, look, this is not an authoritarian dictatorship. He can't just do what he wants. He cannot just flaunt the rule of law. We have laws. We have judges. We have the three branches of government, and we're all supposed to be respecting each other, and we are supposed to be kept in check with one another. And so he may still want that, but that's where the people come in. This is where the people speaking up will make a difference. And I tell you, the more that do speak up, the more that that say that they are not going to tolerate these kinds of actions, the more he will have to back down at some point. And I read somewhere which said that when do authoritarian dictators back down? At what point do they back down? I'd even saw something that said, well, when 3% of the population rises up against that. In this case, this would be millions of people in the United States. But nonetheless, I think we are getting to that point.
Do you think any of your Republican colleagues are going to stand up?
So will our Republican colleagues stand up? That's a very interesting question because Trump is trying to get them to do this massive cut to Medicaid so that he can give the $5.5 trillion of tax giveaways to his billionaire friends. So some of the Republicans are getting cold feet because they know that if they do that, the people in the district are going to get very, very angry. And so it will be interesting to see whether they have the ability to stand up to him, because what he does is when he senses that somebody is going to go against his desires, he puts a full court press, twisting their arms like crazy or threatening them by saying that he's going to run somebody against them. So the Republicans will have to choose between being able to continue in office or having Trump go after them.
Question back here?
Yes.
Right? Thank you for your comments. I was encouraged by your list of free things to do. The item that I think many of us would like you to expand upon and to help us with is the activism part. So many of us are looking for channels and ways to express our discontent in our opposition to the things that are going on in this country, but we feel at a loss in terms of how we go about doing that. Anything that you can do or your fellow Congress people do can help direct us into the channels to communicate our frustration and our concern. I don't think we're being helped enough by Congress to direct us into the way of being more active and expressing our concern. And if you could think about how you can help us do that, I think you'd be doing this community and the country a great service.
Well, the more groupings of people that rise up against this in an organized fashion, the better. So when you have people come out and they are in these organized groupings, the voices get louder. And the thing is, there are people that say to me, I'm just one person. What is my protesting can do? I always say, one person turns into 10, turns into 100, turns into 1,000, turns into 1,000,000. And we need millions of people to protest against this. Now, is it possible to get such a thing happen? Well, I don't know if you heard about the hands-off rallies that were in this area. I actually went to all of them right in this area. I went to 2 hands-off rallies in Pasadena, one in Claremont, one in Rancho Cucamonga. And I tell you, the one in Pasadena is just one example. I have never seen such an incredible crowd in my life. They were in the sidewalks, all deep into the sidewalks. It was amazing how organic it was because they made their own signs. It wasn't anybody telling them to hold this sign. They made their own signs and brought themselves out there. And this went on for blocks and blocks and blocks. And I've never seen anything like that in Pasadena. It was just incredible. I do have to say I went to the Bernie Sanders and AOC rally. Oh my goodness. 36,000 people. And, we're talking about basic things, basic rights, basic rule of law. And everybody was united in that. Now, the interesting thing about the hands-off rallies, they were started by a very, very grassroots group called Indivisible. And Indivisible decided through their social media that they were going to get people out there. It didn't, well, it did take money. They just got the social media to get the people out there. Everybody brought their own signs, and they were able to make a splash. And actually, we have coordinated them. We have coordinated them with them on the days of action. And the hands-off rally came about because we needed to have one day in which people across the country were speaking with one voice. And as a result, there were millions that were in various streets across the country, in red states and blue states. It was an amazing thing, but we have to grow that movement. So we're doing it in every way possible. Town halls, rallies, protests, group meetings, all those things can help. I hold, just today I had a press conference on what Trump is doing to our Social Security system. And, what he's doing to our tax system. Today is tax day. But what we see here is that he's using the tax day in order to give a gigantic $5.5 trillion tax giveaway to billionaires and corporations. But he's doing it by cutting basic services to the American people, like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. So we use every avenue that we can to raise our voices about what's really happening. Yes.
What I'm seeing in slide down, kids on the playground. Thank you. What I'm seeing is like kids on the playground, and there's the bully. Well, you stand up to the bully, and the bully backs down. So I keep thinking, we need to call on Republican senators. It's always kind of like when you're playing a game, you find the weakest link. If we could find 10 weakest links, Republican senators, call their offices, talk to them, leave them messages. I know I myself have sent Adam Schiff several emails. I called Senator Padilla with the same idea. Talk to these Republican senators. They have to, I in my heart feel that they know right from wrong. And what's happening is wrong, and they know it. I don't know what they're so afraid of. I know that the bully says, well, I'll make sure you get midtermed. Okay, but they're not all up for re-election. So we could let these people know that, look, this is what you're doing. It's wrong. You're taking away our way of life. I'm just thinking that if we could call these people, or if your colleagues could start to work on, maybe that would help. I don't know.
You are on to an idea, the weakest link. And we have identified weak links in the House of Representatives. These are the ones who have a swing district, and where they also have very high levels of the Medicaid population. And so I'll just name for you these weak links. David Valadeo is in a Central Valley district. He's in the House of Representatives, and he has a district that has 67% Medicaid patients. And will he vote against the 67% that are relying on this for their basic health care? Well, we have to let the people in that district know about that, right? That's clearly a weak link. And actually, there's two others. There is Ket Calvert in the Palm Springs area, who just barely squeaked by. and young Kim in the Orange County area, another one that barely squeaked by. So these are the weak links in the Southern California area, and we have identified others in other areas. But I'm just planting the seed in you guys because, as we go towards the 2026 election, we have an opportunity to change things around.
Thank you. We always appreciate you, Congresswoman, for your work, and I cannot imagine the number of miles you fly in 1 year because you attend everything. So, regardless of our affiliate, you thank you. With that, would you be so kind as to comment about anything that you know on the status of raids at either schools or places of worship? And I hate to ask, but it's happening at where that you're aware of in the near area. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's because something horrible happened here in the Long Beach area where two officials who said that they were from the Office of Homeland Security went to a school. Actually, it was two schools, and they asked for 5 students in the 5th and 6th grade in one school and one student in another school. And so, of course, the principal was called, and the principal said, "Who are you?" And they wouldn't even get their name over. They just said that they were from the Office of Homeland Security. Then they lied. They said the caretakers of these kids who were unaccompanied children who came in through the migration process. He said the caretakers approved of this. And then the principal said, why are you here? Because I want to check on their welfare. Do you believe that? By the way, Department of Homeland Security never checks on welfare. It's the Department of Health and Human Services that checks on that. So it's not even within their jurisdiction to check on the welfare of the child. And so, yeah, they lied about having the caretaker's permission, and they probably lied about the mission because, I suspect they were there to just grab them and deport them. And so, anyway, I really have to give kudos to the principals of both schools because they said, no, you will not come onto this campus. Yeah. So this little one. And by the way, up until the Trump administration, schools, hospitals, and churches were supposed to be off limits. Those were so-called sensitive areas. And so they, in times past, none of these Office of Homeland Security people could ever come on to such a facility, but now they can, and they should not, because schools should be a safe place where kids can feel like, they can learn. Yeah, elementary school, come on.
Yeah. If we're I'm on the library board, and I noticed the money for the library is just being withdrawn. And yes, and so he's not doing that. But I'm concerned about censorship. And I think that may be the next move. Like in the South, then the school boards actually choose the books and the library as well. And I'm concerned. Do you think that will be the next step?
It could very well be the next step. I'm just looking at what's happening at the universities. The universities should be the place of free thought, free speech, the ability to develop ideas. But what Trump is doing systematically with each of the universities is forcing them to turn over all kinds of data. And with Harvard, which is the latest step, with Harvard, wanted to turn over databases of the students. But what's even worse is for them to look at any DEI program and to eliminate it. What we've seen from just experiences of researchers who've had their grants dismantled and rejected is that if anything has even the term equity in it, or even the name of a ethnic group, then it has been terminated. Example, West Point, West Point, our military academy. They had the Asian student group, the Black student group, and the Hispanic student group dismantled immediately. I mean, just because they were of this ethnicity. So this is what's going on. So I would not be surprised if the censorship accrues, books, I should say, would be next.
Oh, Congressman Judy's Dorco, and a question for you. I wanted to expand this conversation to a more global perspective. And so, working in finance, very concerned about the damage that we're causing globally and with our allies. I'm aware of the fact that the U.S. has $36 billion of debt, that a third of that is owned by foreign investors. Some of the things that we're trying to do with regards to Greenland and NATO, to me, also impacts our standing from a global standpoint. And it seems like we're taking a step back with this protectionist and isolationist policies, which I think in the long run will have a negative impact on the say in the United States for. But here he comes about that. Yeah.
Yes, this is also a huge area of concern. It's taken decades to get to the point where the U.S. was the world leader and trusted by all countries to ensure that there would be peace and democracy in as many places as possible. And now we are violating that trust. Absolutely. And on one hand, it's isolationist by abandoning Ukraine. On the other hand, it's imperialist by trying to take Greenland and the Panama Canal and even saying that Canada should do it with a diverse state. So it is something which is destroying our relationship with other countries, and the allies that we had are certainly questioning what the U.S. is doing. It's a very, very dangerous thing, and particularly the situation with Ukraine very much worries me, because if Russia does indeed invade Ukraine and is able to take it over, then that means that Russia will continue on trying to get back the countries that left it when Russia broke up. And then that means that NATO gets involved, and then that means a world war.
You have time for one more, or okay? How about
First, I would like to say thank you so much for your attendance today. My name is Mano Iwata. I'm a resident in this wonderful city, and also I'm a high school student actually in a local high school. It's a Pike. And I just wanted to ask, especially since we see a lot of the values of our country, also the Constitution, being like broken several times over just even the past few months, how long do you think till I guess other local politicians or even politicians around the country will still start taking action, especially since our Constitution, the founding of our country, is starting to be violated?
Yes. Well, I think the people are demanding it. The people of the United States, everywhere I go, they're saying kind of something similar to you, which is do something. And so I think our elected officials are going to be called upon more and more to do something. And in fact, I would say for all of you, hold those elected officials accountable. When you are making your choice as to who you support, are they on the front line speaking out for our democracy? Are they working to preserve our democracy and standing up to the bullies and to this oligarchy that Trump is trying to impose upon us, where we have rule, where the rule of this country is done by billionaires, basically. and where we have a greater income inequality, and so there will be the people up here and people down here. So we cannot have that. We cannot have that. So yes, I urge you to hold all our elected officials accountable of that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, how about a hand for the Senator Tree? Right before that, very kind to me. But you do do you a ice black. But
On the behalf of Sonoria City Club, we would like to send you with this note. On the behalf of Severina City Club, we would like to present you with this little award to thank you for coming to visit us today. Take away.
okay, so thank you. Okay, just real quickly, recognizing our April birthdays this month. We have Teddy and Nicole Basuri, Bruno Tanner, and Dr. Stephen Huang. So happy birthday. Playing some music too. Okay, our upcoming events. Next month we have Chris Erskine, who's a Pulitzer Prize winner who also writes for the Tribune. He'll be here on May 20th. And on June, we'll have our Fiesta at the Old Mill. Of course, July 4th, we'll have our Pavilion at Lacey Park. We'll have National Night Out in August, Sports Night in September. Huntington Library, where's Randy Shulman? Yeah, we'll have our event at the Huntington with Randy speaker. And then in November, we'll have our traditional Rose Court and Queen here. So thank you again, Congresswoman Judy Chu. And thank you all for attending. And we will see you all next month.